Happy Halloween, everyone. I am so excited to finally be celebrating this holiday. It's the best time of the year. We get to indulge in scary movies and the festivities of it all. I've always had a very special place in my heart for Halloween because, as you guys know, I'm one of the biggest horror nerds there is around. It's my favorite genre. It's the genre that really got me into filmmaking and film criticism as a whole. So I decided that for the month of October, I was going to only watch horror movies throughout the month, not including new releases. Obviously, that's different. That's a thing I have to do for this channel. But on my off time, and then just the movies that I decided to throw on, they were all horror films, and most of them were movies I hadn't seen either ever before or in quite a while. So we're going to go through the list of films that I watched throughout the month and rank them from worst to best. This isn't going to be that in-depth. It's not going to be a video with a ton of bells and whistles, but I just wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of horror movies that I was able to watch throughout the month of October, and hopefully get a discussion going in the comments, and you guys can talk to me about what movies you watched throughout this holiday season. So without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Coming in last place is unfortunately Sisters, directed by Brian De Palma. This movie was on my radar for quite some time as I really was intrigued by the concept and didn't know a whole lot about it, plus Brian De Palma is the man. But I really felt underwhelmed by Sisters. I think that it only had its concept and nothing else beyond that, and I think it took way too many safe routes to a very weak payoff. It's not the worst thing in the world. I do think it's very well acted, and I think De Palma is able to create some very visceral imagery in this film, but overall it was very forgettable and honestly my least favorite thing I watched all month. Not terrible, which is a great testament to the rest of these movies, but not something I'm ever going to come back to. Coming up next, I actually enjoy every single film from here on out. Freddy vs. Jason is one of those movies that, even for how dumb and really outdated this kind of film is, it is such a lightning in the bottle film that we couldn't have gotten any other time than the early 2000s, and I think that it is a ton of fun from start to finish. And I think the way they were able to insert Jason and Freddy into their own storylines was very interesting. So this is a movie I hadn't seen since I was a little kid, but I'm glad it holds up, and honestly, it might stay in my October horror movie rotation. Shelby Oaks, directed by Chris Stuckman, is something I just talked about in a video, but I really was happy with this. I think it brought the scares, it brought the atmosphere. There's a lot of potential and a lot of groundwork laid by Stuckman to make future really great films. I just think that it gets undercut by some of the more amateurish mistakes being made, which was understandable, obviously, because this is a crowd-funded film made by someone who isn't a full-time filmmaker. I think the fact that Shelby Oaks even exists in the first place is something that we should all be celebrating. Black Phone 2 is definitely an improvement over the first. It's another movie I did already cover in a review, so I won't spend too much time on it. But yeah, I liked it. It's definitely flawed. It still has the Scott Derrickson of it all, so I'm not going to ever really be in love with anything he does. But I think that this is definitely his strongest outing to date, and something I could see myself coming back to. Host was a movie that I've always wanted to check out ever since it dropped. I think it was the Dead Meat podcast that really hyped this film up, and I've been wanting to check it out ever since I listened to that episode. But it really utilizes its very gimmicky premise in an effective and terrifying way. This very easily could have ended up like Unfriended or any of those other dumb FaceTime Skype horror films, but this really utilizes that feeling of isolation we were all going through at the beginning of the pandemic, and uses it in a way that I think explores some pretty horrifying topics. Now, it's very short. I wish that this could have had a lot more meat on its bones. I wish that we spent more time with the characters. I think that building up their relationships a little bit would make what happens in the third act a little stronger and hit with a little more of an impact. But I do really like the film as a thought experiment, and watching it unfold was way scarier and way more tense than I ever thought it was going to be. The runtime definitely holds it back from being higher on this list, but I did really enjoy my time with Host. The Ring from 1998, so not the Gore Verbinski version, the original Japanese version, is another film I have had my eyes on for quite some time, just because I really am intrigued by the concept of The Ring. I think that it's such a unique premise that really could have been explored in such interesting ways. And going back to this original film, I really did enjoy my time with it. I think the folklore and the overall mystique of the film is executed in a way that really had me on the edge of my seat and wanting more. I just could not connect with any of the characters and anything that was happening in their lives surrounding the horrific events. Choosing to tell the story from the perspective of a journalist was a very intriguing idea. However, she wasn't really ever fleshed out enough to be that effective of a protagonist, and I wasn't really given anything else outside of her. I do wish we got a decent amount more from this film. Again, they were touching on stuff that is so interesting, and I was glued to my seat anytime they were getting into why this was going on, the backstory of it all. But I think that The Ring overall is a very unbalanced and kind of paper-thin experience. Moving up the list, we have Predator. This is the first of a couple of movies on here that I don't know if they fully count as horror, but they're horror adjacent enough and I wanted to watch them anyway, so they are included on this list. Predator is a very intentionally satirical film. It tackles a subject that was very prominent in the late 80s, action heroes and machismo and hypermasculinity, all of that great stuff. And it subverts the narrative in a way that does not get talked about enough. This movie is a lot smarter than it is given credit for. However, it is also very dumb. That may not make a lot of sense, but it's simultaneously tackling an issue that nobody else was really touching on back then, but also playing into the same stereotypes as the films it was actively critiquing. So you're getting this mishmash of really intriguing commentary on the genre and then just really fun, dumb action sequences. Arnold gives an all-time great bad performance in this film, and Carl Weathers is always welcome in any cast, in any film ever. R.I.P. to him, obviously. But yeah, this is a fun time. It's Predator. You throw it on with your friends, have a great time. It's a classic. We all know what Predator is. Christine is a John Carpenter film that is very unlike anything else he's done in his filmography. It's a movie that follows the blueprint of a lot of high school dramas and adds in elements of horror as the story progresses, and I was really wrapped up in this entire universe Carpenter was building. I think Arnie as a character is one of his most intriguing protagonists, and I think his relationship with Christine and his obvious obsession with the car and the way it took hold of him was very intriguing to follow. However, outside of him, I wasn't all that intrigued in the other members of the cast, and I think that the movie suffers from being a little too bloated. It still is a great time though, and I would recommend throwing this into any Halloween watch-through playlist. Occult is one of the most unique Japanese horror films I have seen to date. It was recommended to me by the Letterboxd list of underrated or hidden gem Japanese horror films, and I ended up really enjoying my time with it. It's a celestial horror film that is filmed in the style of a mockumentary, and I think that tackling this subject matter from that angle allows the filmmakers to create a lot of grassroots-esque horror in the film and makes you terrified of seemingly mundane interactions and conversations between the lead characters. You never know where any of their heads are truly at and if they are completely sane or are being taken over by this cosmic force that is calling out to our main subject of the documentary. It certainly could have used a much higher budget, as some of these sequences look like they were filmed by a 12-year-old on YouTube in 2014. However, I do really enjoy the thought experiment of this film, and it's something that will spark a ton of discussion if you choose to watch it with a group of people. I rewatched Weapons for this holiday season, mainly because Cam hasn't seen it, and I thought that this would be right up her alley, and also because it's a movie that I wanted to get a second viewing on. For as strong of a debut as Barbarian was, I think it lacked the shelf life for me to call it a true horror classic of the 2020s. However, after a second viewing, I am very comfortable with giving Weapons that title, as I am starting to fall in love with this film. Zach Cregger has a real nose for what gets under people's skin, and I think the film plays with your expectations in a way that no other horror filmmaker is really attempting nowadays. He really wants his movies to be unpredictable and wild, and I always admired that aspect of his filmmaking, but not before Weapons has it ever come together in such a cohesive way. Again, this is something that I have reviewed already on the channel, so if you want to see my full thoughts, go check out that video. But just know that Weapons is definitely one of the best horror films of the year, and is one that gets better the more I think about it. I mean, it's The Shining. What do you really want me to say with this one? It was my first true, all the way through viewing of the film. I had seen bits and pieces of it throughout TV and stuff like that, throughout my childhood. But I came away with the same conclusions that everybody else does. It's a great movie. Everybody knows that. Let's just move on. Scanners was something I had been pushing off for a while just because I am really not a fan of David Cronenberg. I think that most of his work is pretty abysmal, and this film was not looking to break the mold for me. But I will say, I think that this is his best film. I really enjoyed my time with Scanners. I felt like the adventurous and almost dangerous director that I was promised in his other films finally comes to life with Scanners. It's an incredibly cerebral and murky sci-fi film that really preys on your senses in a way that I was not expecting. Going into this movie as blind as humanly possible is ideal, as it genuinely takes you on a roller coaster ride from start to finish. Not only that, but it has some of the best sound design and cinematography I've seen in a horror movie in quite some time. I definitely never expected to full-on love a David Cronenberg film, but I loved Scanners, and it is already in my upper echelon of horror films that I've seen in my lifetime. These next four are absolute all-timers for me, and kicking it off with Reanimator, I could not think of a more ideal horror film. Everything from the practical effects, the odd and creepy characters, the brilliant premise, the gorgeous cinematography, the atmosphere, the music, the sound design, and once again, the practical effects. This movie has everything. It is some of the most fun I have had with a horror movie in quite some time, and I think that it scratches an itch that hasn't been satisfied for me in terms of horror. To put it plainly, Reanimator is right up my alley, and it was an absolute slam dunk for me for the second I pressed play. Going into our top three now, this is another film I mentioned earlier with Predator where that was kind of cheating, and that's not really a horror movie. Mandy is another film that's like that. I don't know if you can technically classify it as solely a horror movie, but it definitely is taking from horror elements and is a overall thrilling experience. Mandy is unlike anything I've seen in quite some time. Everything from the visual language it is able to create and the wholly unique set design and world it's able to build. I was absolutely glued to the screen from the second the movie started, and I think that it doesn't get enough recognition when talked about some of the better movies to have come out in the last decade. We also get an all-timer here from Nick Cage, who was really born to play a character like this. I described the film to a friend of mine who was curious about it, that it is kind of a marriage between John Carpenter's The Thing and Mad Max Fury Road. This movie is so visceral and exciting and murky and disgusting and gross. You just have to go watch it to believe it, and I am very glad that I finally came around to checking this one out. Nearly topping my list is Robert Eggers' The Witch. This was his debut feature-length film all the way back in 2015. Man, it is so weird that this movie is 10 years old. But I remember seeing this for the first time in theaters and not knowing what to do with it. I was very young, I had never quite seen any horror film quite like it, and I was floored. And to this day, I gave it a rewatch not that long ago because my friend hadn't seen it before. I am enthralled by this movie, and lets your imagination run wild as this kind of faux fairy tale plays out before your eyes. Everybody gives an incredible performance in the cast, and you can really feel the life being breathed into the entire film by Robert Eggers' dynamic filmmaking. Well, he's gone on to make 3 other incredible movies that I would rate a 4.5 or higher. Nothing will ever beat The Witch for me in terms of his filmography, as it is one of the best horror films of the 21st century. Unfortunately for The Witch, though, Evil Dead 2 did not come out in the 21st century and ultimately trumps it and being the best horror movie I watched all of October. This is a personal pick for me. Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. I watch it every single October. I think it is the perfect mixture of genuine horror and getting under your skin in a way that will freak you out as you watch the movie, but also consistently making the audience laugh at itself and Sam Raimi's just off-the-wall kinetic energy comes together so well in this movie. It's a very lightning-in-the-bottle type film. There's going to be nothing like it ever again, even within its own franchise, and I think that Evil Dead 2 just... It's on another level than the rest of these movies for me personally in a way that I can't describe in this kind of short little video. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday. Obviously stay safe and all that good stuff. But let me know what horror movies you guys like to watch in October. Let me know what you thought of this list. Drop your own ranking of the horror movies you watched throughout October. And yeah, I will see you with the next video. Happy Halloween. Thank you guys so much for watching.